Welcome, and thank you for joining us for the JDCA's 11th Congressional District of Ohio's Democrat Candidate Forum, hosted by the Jewish Democratic Council of America's Ohio chapter and co-sponsored by Bend the Arc Jewish Action Cleveland. My name is Ron Klein, and I am chair of JDCA and a former congressman from Florida. I'm also a former Clevelander myself, growing up near Cedar and Green in University Heights, a proud graduate of Heights High, the Ohio State University, and Case Western Reserve University School of Law. My roots run deep through Ohio's 11th Congressional District, and I'm thrilled to see so many qualified candidates run for this important seat. We are thrilled to be joined today by all 7 candidates running to become the Democratic nominee and succeed Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, who was nominated by President Biden and Vice President Harris to serve as the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. JDCA is proud to support her nomination and continues to urge the Senate to move forward with her confirmation. Former Representative John E. Barnes Jr., Chairwoman Chaptel Brown, former City Councilman Jeff Johnson, Tariq K. Shabazz, former Senator Shirley Smith, former Senator Nina Turner, and former Representative Brian Flannery, we thank you for spending time with us this morning. In more than 3 years since our founding, JDCA has established itself as the voice of Jewish Democrats, advocating for policies and electing candidates who share our Jewish and democratic values. Throughout the 2020 general election and Georgia runoffs, JDCA endorsed over 120 candidates and mobilized more than 1.7 million Jewish voters. Together with the help of our Pound Jewish Dems in Action and 15 state grassroots chapters, including the Ohio chapter hosting us today, we elected Joe Biden president and Vice President Kamala Harris. We flipped the Senate and protected Democrat control of the House. In 2021, JDCA is playing a critical role in supporting Jewish democratic policies, priorities, and continues to serve as the voice of Jewish Democrats in special elections in the ramp up to 2022. One of the most important election activities JDCA has undertaken includes education through our Democratic candidate forums. In 2020, we hosted 3 of those forums with 3 candidates, including now Senator Jon Ossoff in the Georgia Senate Democratic primary, the 7 candidates in the New York 17 Democratic primary, and 7 candidates in the Massachusetts 4th District primary. We hosted these forums to provide voters with the opportunity to learn more about the candidates from the candidates themselves on issues that matter most to the Jewish electorate. To our participants, thank you for joining us this afternoon. JDCA has not taken a position in this important race, and we invite you to listen carefully to each candidate. With a very thin Democratic majority in the House, it is absolutely critical that we elect leaders who will get things done and advocate on our behalf for both Jewish and democratic values. I'm now going to turn it over to Adam Rosen to tell us more about our work in Ohio, the critical importance of this district to Jewish Democrats, and to introduce this afternoon's moderator, JDCA CEO Haley Soifer. Adam?
Thanks, Ron. My name is Adam Rosen, and I'm thrilled to be here today with all of you. I'm also proud to serve as JDCA's Ohio chapter leader alongside Bobby Saferstein, our program director, and as a member of JDCA's Next Generation Leadership Council. Like Ron, I'm a proud Clevelander and Ohio State grad. On behalf of the JDCA Ohio chapter, we're thrilled to host the first Democratic candidate forum in this race. Our Ohio chapter volunteers made over 55,000 voter contacts during the general election and are committing to electing Democrats running up and down the ballot here at home. Ohio's 11th Congressional District, my home district, has historically been one of great importance to the Jewish community. We are a proudly diverse district that includes majority Black precincts between Cleveland and Akron, my actual hometown, and the largest Jewish population of voters in Ohio. This district was created in 1990 through redistricting when Congressman Louis Stokes, the first African-American congressman elected in the state of Ohio, was elected and went on to serve as the founding member of the Congressional Black Caucus, changing the path of Cleveland and the country for the better. Congressman Stokes was a dear friend to the Jewish community and of Israel. Stokes' successor, Congresswoman Stephanie Tubbs Jones, continued his historic legacy, serving as the first African-American woman to be elected to Congress from Ohio, followed by Congresswoman Marcia Fudge, whom we are grateful to have representing the district today. JDCA is not endorsed in this race, and we intend for this forum to be an educational opportunity for our fellow Buckeyes to listen carefully to all 7 candidates and vote on Election Day once it is set. We also hope that all 7 candidates carefully listen to each other and not engage in a back and forth or exchange disparaging comments about each other. We know they won't. We're thrilled to host this forum, but please remember, it's not a debate. Each question will be directed to all 7 candidates, and your answers should be directed towards the audience, not each other. And with that, I'm happy to introduce JDCA's CEO, Haley Soifer, who will moderate today's forum. Prior to work for JDCA, Haley worked for 4 members of Congress, including our now Vice President, Kamala Harris, and in the Obama administration. For the past 2.5 years, Haley has led JDCA, and I'm thrilled she'll be serving tonight as our moderator. Over to you, Haley.
Thank you, Ron and Adam. I'm thrilled to moderate this panel and even more thrilled to see so many candidates running in this race. JDCA strongly supports our vibrant democracy and elections and works to ensure that all voices and votes are heard. The views expressed today represent those of the candidates and not necessarily JDCA. Because there are so many candidates with us today, we will have to have some rules for the forum, which I'll now review. Candidates will have 1 minute for introductory remarks. I will then ask questions, including audience questions, and we encourage you all to submit your questions via email to info@jewishdems.org. All questions, including audience questions, must be directed to all 7 candidates. Candidates then will have 1 minute to answer your questions. We will alter the order in which everyone answers. There are no rebuttals, and as Adam mentioned, our candidates should not direct their comments or answers at each other. Please remember you are addressing the audience. Last, we will end with 1 minute closing statements. Please adhere to the rule regarding time limits, and when your time is up, we will have a sign for the speakers on the screen. With the sign, we kindly ask you to complete your sentence, and if you speak beyond the time, we will all hear a ring. It'll sound like a ring. It'll sound like that. We will be enforcing the time guidelines strictly to ensure an equitable and controlled forum. Without further ado, I will now turn it over to the 7 candidates with us for their opening statements. With the permission of the candidates, we will be addressing everyone by first name. Unfortunately, John Barnes Jr. will not be able to stay with us for the remainder of the forum due to an unfortunate family emergency. Our thoughts are with John and his family at this difficult time, and while we were unable to reschedule the forum, we greatly appreciate him being with us today to give his opening statement, so he will go first. We will proceed after John, followed by Brian, Jeff, John, Nina, Shirley, Chantel, and Tarek. So John Barnes, over to you for your opening statement.
Thank you so very much, Haley and JDCA, for pulling together this forum. I think that is a very, very important opportunity to hear about the next stage in the evolution of the 11th Congressional District of Ohio, which is a rich tapestry of cultural diversity and very, very important for Ohio. I am unfortunately, as you have stated, unable to participate. I lost my mother-in-law. She was 99 years old, and on March 8th, she would have turned 100. It's a difficult time for our family, but I know her, and I know that she would want me to participate in this forum, and I am honored to be here today. I think it's very, very important for me just to express that my support for the state of Israel has been steady and consistent over the years, both personally and as a public official. And you can be assured that as Congressman, I will continue to do so. I think that given the time period, that one of the most important things that I have to tell you is this. You have a friend in John Barnes, and I would have a focus on bringing the Jewish leaders together to hear from them frequently about issues that are affecting the Jewish community, not only here, but around the world. And so I appreciate this opportunity, and I look forward to talking with all of the candidates over a period of time, this campaign once it commences. And so thank you so very, very much for your leadership and the important work that you are doing, not only in the Jewish community, but to spread good cheer throughout our community. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, John. And again, our prayers and our thoughts are with you and your family. We will now hear from Brian.
Hey, good morning. I'm Brian Flannery, and I'm not a career politician. After 9 years as a city council member and a state representative, I've spent the last 19 years in the private sector as a small businessman and in management for a leading healthcare provider. I'm running for Congress because the House needs more members with real-life experiences, raising a family, dealing with rising healthcare costs, whether it's for our family at home or the ones in their nursing home, and with spiraling college costs. Our 11th congressional district's 320,000 Democratic and 22,000 voters who are Jewish, they want a fighter for economic and social justice, affordable and accessible healthcare, quality education, and against white supremacy and anti-Semitism. I want to join the Biden team to make sure that anti-Semitic behavior is condemned, indicted, and incarcerated. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Jeff.
And thank you for having me today. I have lived and worked in the 11th district all of my life, and my family has been here for over 120 years. I know the district. I'm the most experienced candidate in this race. I have worked in public service for over 30 years, 23 of those years in elective office. I have served in 3 branches of local government in Cleveland, legislative, executive, and judiciary. I have also served in 2 levels of government, the local and also as a state senator. The 11th district in the past has chosen as its congresspersons 3 attorneys who were experienced, qualified, and committed to use their talents fighting for the citizens. I am an attorney, and I have earned 3 college degrees. Experience matters, qualifications matter, being prepared to serve matters. I am ready to go to Congress and stand with the Biden administration to build America back better. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from Nina. And Nina, please unmute.
Good afternoon, and thank you to the JDCA for hosting this wonderful forum and for all of you who are joining us today. I'm Nina Turner, and I believe in creating an America as good as its promise in the Ohio 11th District. I know that many of us, all of us actually, have been impacted by the COVID-19, and the lack of leadership that preceded us has caused a great deal of pain for people, both personally and also for our small businesses. We had an administration that did everything in its power to divide us and to not provide for the material needs of the people in this country, especially those who have been left behind and marginalized. When I go to Congress, I am going there to stand up for all of the people. I am not going to Congress just to go along to get along. I am going there to stand up for the needs of the people, and I will work with anybody, a conservative, moderate, or progressive, who is about the business of the people, period.
Thank you. We'll now hear from Shirley. Did we just lose Shirley? All right.
Can you hear me?
We do hear you. Great. Thank you, Shirley. Please go ahead.
Okay, I'm Shirley Smith. Good afternoon, everybody. And I just cannot resist to say hello to Brian because I have not seen him in years, and it is great to see you. But I want you to know that I am running because I have the qualifications, experience, and skills to go to Congress. I am a mother. I am a glam mother. I graduated from Cleveland State. I attended Harvard University Kennedy School of Government. I served in the Ohio House of Representatives and also the Senate, where I was elected by my colleagues as the Assistant Minority Leader. I was also the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus President. I have had significant amount of bills passed in the legislature while I was there, more so than any other legislator in this area while I was serving. I was also the only Democrat to serve as a chair in a committee in a Republican-controlled Senate. As I left the Senate, Governor Kasich appointed me to the Ohio Parole Board, where I became noted for a lot of significant changes that I made on the parole board. I have worked in corporate America for many years, giving me that experience. And I am running because I'd like to bring better government to the 11th district through job creation, partnership, and also protecting our land resource, natural resources.
Thank you. Chantal.
Thank you. I'm Chantal Brown. In 2018, I had the opportunity to visit Israel with other elected officials from around the country. As a child of faith, I was eager to see the religious sites, but what I'll never forget were the similarities and familiarities of communal culture shared between the Jewish and Black communities. While there, we visited a kibbutz near the Gaza Strip. It was an unexpected yet familiar experience of community, camaraderie, and collaboration. Everyone shared what they had to offer for everyone else's benefit, but there was also an unforgettable feeling of vulnerability. When I think about the emergency bomb shelters scattered throughout the areas where people live, work, and play, visiting the state solidified why the bond between US and Israel is and should always remain strong. Not only do we share democratic values, but the shared experience between the Jewish community and the Black community on issues dealing with hatred, persecution, only amplifies the importance of our partnership to work together to advance our common goals. As the only elected official in this race, I will continue to work to strengthen this crucial international relationship if elected to represent the 11th Congressional District. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, we will hear from Tarek.
Can you hear me?
We do. Please go ahead.
Okay. My name is Tariq K. Shabazz, and I'm running for the United States House of Representatives for the 11th Congressional District of Ohio. I have the shared life experience that so many of our residents are facing, the education, as well as the military and professional background. I'm a husband, I'm a political scientist, and I'm a Navy veteran. But before I got any of those titles, I was just a little kid that grew up in the inner cities of Cleveland, Ohio. And I know exactly what people are facing right now. I feel the struggle they're facing. When I was a child, my next door neighbor was murdered in my backyard. I've seen gun violence so much it impacted the way that I thought, and I understand exactly fundamentally what the individuals throughout this district are facing. They need a fighter in Congress. I know what it feels like to be voiceless. And for the people that feel voiceless, your words, your thoughts, your concerns will be echoed throughout the halls of Congress. It is high time that we actually fight for our people and we actually improve the conditions that have been debilitating and have damaged and taken the resources away from our people from building for so long. To the great people of District 11, after these elections, you can call me your congressman. I'm Tariq K. Shabazz, and this is our moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq. We will now move to questions. We will start with some drafted questions from JDCA and Ben the Arc, and from there we'll go to audience questions. As a reminder, please send your questions to info@jewishdems.org. Our first question is regarding COVID-19 and economic equity. In 2020, Cleveland had the highest poverty rate among large cities in the United States, and it's a city with the 6th highest income inequality. The COVID-19 pandemic and resulting economic crisis further worsened economic disparities in the US. If elected to Congress, how would you support economic recovery in the district? And what measures would you take to combat the disproportionate impact of COVID-19 on communities of color? We will begin with Brian, followed by Jeff, Nina, Shirley, Chantel, and Tariq. Brian.
I first have to say I'm not surprised that there are 4 questions. I was surprised that the first question wasn't, why is this night different from any other night? The 11th Congressional District needs to be a model of success in setting the example for how we deal with this pandemic and economic insecurity. And while we have the world's best healthcare facilities in the world, we deliver care for COVID treatments disproportionately to communities of color, especially in our community. It's tied to poor nutrition, poor housing, unreliable transportation, and a digital divide. As your next congressman, I will work with the Biden-Harris team and their Health Equity Task Force to root out poverty where it exists, in Akron, in Cleveland, in East Cleveland, etc. We're going to do this by providing the necessary tools to combat these challenges we face. And we can do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Well, clearly, when you look at the 11th district, what you see is high poverty rate. You see the inability for a system to go and deal with what is a structural problem based on structural racism. You cannot dismantle the problems of poverty without going first and foremost at the structural, systematic racism that exists that's created poverty. I was a big supporter of $15 an hour, and I was out here on the streets in Cleveland fighting for that. So I would fight to strengthen labor, to make sure labor continues to be able to take care of the ability to organize and be able to collectively bargain. You've got to have a strong labor existence in order to lift people up. So I'm a big, strong proponent of that. The health inequities when it comes to COVID is the reason why there is a disparity in the death and the sickness. So what we have to do is, once again, go in and focus on taking away the inequities when it comes to the vaccines to the minority communities. You have to bring the people with their implicit bias and get them out there to understand that they have to provide healthcare that is equitable, healthcare that everyone has a right to, and to go and change the system in which COVID has been able to take advantage of. Hypertension and diabetes, obesity, these inequities that exist in the minority community, COVID has taken hold of that. So that's how I would approach it.
Thank you, Nina.
Well, it's certainly clear that the last administration was woefully unprepared and failed the American people miserably. And we lost 41% of Black-owned businesses nationwide. You know, I'm certainly pleased that the current administration is moving quickly and they have a national vaccination plan and package. I am disappointed that the $15 an hour minimum wage increase did not get in there this time, but I am certain that we're going to continue to fight to do that because the economics of the African-American community and other communities of color is vitally important. And I fully support what Senators Sherrod Brown and Senator Sanders are doing and some others to continue to push. You know, racism is a public health crisis and we have to deal with it as such. We have to go deep, we have to go wide, and we have to ensure that we are making that change on all levels of government. And Medicare for All is certainly one of the best ways to help to eradicate this conundrum. We have a lot of work to do when it comes to dealing with systemic racism.
Thank you. Shirley.
Well, one of the things we have to do is understand that a pandemic is not only an airborne disease, but it is also health disparities. It is infant mortality. It is subpar education. It is lead-based poisoning. And then it is criminal injustices. So when we talk about how we resolve that issue, we treat it like it's COVID-19. We give it all we got. We take the masks off our eyes, and not only do we wash our hands, but we wash our hearts. We give it all we got because we have to understand we cannot go back to normal. Thank you.
Chantel.
Thank you very much. People are hurting from this pandemic and its devastating impact on our economy. We need short-term relief, layoff preventions, and equitable vaccination delivery. We need to get checks out to people now, and we need to keep the moratorium on evictions so that people who are struggling can stay in their homes. And when it comes to the vaccine, there are barriers in communities of color to getting the vaccine. There is also hesitancy, but transportation is another issue when it comes to vaccine accessibility. I was pleased to see the work being done at the Neon Health Center locally here, but we need more of that. The fact of the matter is, these disparities have been here for a long time, and they were accelerated by COVID-19. I'm proud the Biden-Harris administration is prioritizing health equity, and I will certainly work with them to ensure COVID relief is distributed equitably. As an elected official, I'm not new to this issue. In fact, when I worked with First Year Cleveland, I was inspired to introduce and pass the bipartisan legislation to declare racism as a public health crisis here in Cuyahoga County. So I have a plan and a record of addressing this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Tari.
District 11, we have a problem. America, we truly have a problem. We need to address the effects of systemic racism and how they have absolutely destroyed our inner cities. In relation to COVID-19 and our response, I want to say first, I applaud our entire medical teams throughout the country for our great work we're doing in one of the most devastating times of our lives. But in terms of establishing equity, number one, as your next congressman, I will fight and advocate for reparations. We cannot move forward and have progress if we don't have accountability, and accountability must come with also restitution. I will work in conjunction with the Biden administration to establish this equity throughout this nation. And I'm deeply committed to addressing the current egregious conditions with actual tangible policies. Far too often, we're just talking and not enough policy is actually being done. We can no longer wait. We can't just say we're going to revert back to normalcy because normalcy wasn't great prior to the pandemic. This is why it is imperative that I, as your next congressman, that I'm going to fight to ensure that we have economic relief for our people right now and right now and right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Tari. For our next question, we will hear from Samia, who will represent our co-sponsors, Bend the Arc, Jewish Action Cleveland. Over to you, Samia.
Thank you, Haley. We at Bend the Arc, Jewish Action Cleveland, and the JDCA are committed to criminal justice reform and a comprehensive fight for racial justice and police reform. Here in Ohio, the state's proposed 2-year budget by Governor Mike DeWine includes $10 million in grants for local law enforcement to assist with purchasing body cameras, $8 million to help support programs that meet local communities' needs with promising or proven crime reduction strategies, along with various other measures which are similar to proposals being considered at the federal level. If elected to Congress, how will you address criminal justice reform?
Thank you, Samia. For the order, we will first hear from Jeff, followed by Nina, Shirley, Chantel, Tariq, and Brian. Jeff.
Criminal justice reform takes into many sections of the criminal justice system. First and foremost, police reform. The George Floyd Act was passed by the House yesterday. I would have voted for that. We have to get rid of the chokeholds. We have to make liability not a factor when it comes to police actions. They have to be liable. They have to be accountable. We also have to be able to get rid of no-knock warrants. The criminal justice system also is prison reform, dealing with the over-sentencing of low-level crimes, yet the violence in our communities, the arrests are lower than what they need to be. So there has to be, again, sentencing, being able to allow for bail reform. There are multi ways to do it. I sat on the Criminal Sentencing Commission when I was a state senator. I understand how prison reform has to happen. I was able to get a second chance. I believe we have to have pathways for people who have made mistakes and who had made bad decisions. You have to be able to provide second chances as well, and redistribute what we spend on public safety, not all in the police department, behavioral health, addiction, spend that money that goes over in the police department, spend it in other areas so that we can create coalitions and partnerships to respond to public safety. Thank you.
Nina.
Well, it's certainly been clear for generations that the criminal justice system is inherently unjust to Black and brown and indigenous people. And when you add class in there, there is certainly a class and a caste dynamic. And we have to completely reimagine how we do not only policing, but the entire system from the judiciary to the streets. So implementing alternatives to incarceration, ending mandatory minimum sentencing, ending for-profit prisons and also detention centers, and creating standards for police forces. I will tell you, as somebody that represented half of the 11th congressional district, and when I had 1 month left on my Senate, 1.5 months left on my Senate term, and Tamir Rice was shot on the playground, I called Governor John Kasich, not as a state senator, but as a Black mother who was in pain because of what happened to that young Black boy, and said that we have to do something. And collectively, he and I, along with some other legislators, went to the governor, and he created the task force on community and police relations and appointed me a co-chair of that. And we traveled this entire state hearing the cries and the fears of people throughout this community and continued to push for that change. And for the first time in Ohio's history, we created standards on policing for law enforcement agencies. That's the first step. It is not the end, but it's a truly reformed criminal in this country, in this state and in this country.
Thank you. Shirley.
I'd like to thank Governor DeWine for doing what he's done in terms of giving us money to combat this problem. But I have to say, if you're talking about real criminal justice reform, then you have to talk about a national data collection to prevent indiscriminate and disproportionate sentencing. You have to talk about national bail reform. You have to talk about drug disparities. You have to talk about collateral sanctions, lifting collateral sanctions that prevent many people that when they come out of prisons, they can't get jobs, they can't get affordable housing, they can't get school grants. So you also have to talk about a uniform or a method to look at sentencing people who create nonviolent offenses. And you can no way leave out that citizen and officer interaction. Without those things being in place, everything else is just a suggestion. I've worked in criminal justice and criminal justice reform for the time that I have been in the legislature. And also, I continue to work on this issue. It is very passionate to me, and that's one of the reasons I was appointed to the Ohio Parole Board by the governor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Here, I led the bipartisan legislation in Cuyahoga County that declared racism as a public health crisis, which addresses criminal justice reform. We have to root out disparities in the system, and our system must focus on redemption and rehabilitation. We must reduce the number of incarcerated people while also reducing crime. We need to end the use of private prisons, and we need to end cash bail. In Cuyahoga County, I've also been exploring options so people who call 911 have crisis intervention options and don't have to rely on the police. There's legislation in Congress called the Cahoots Act, which does that on the national level, which I would support. Additionally, in Congress, I would also support the George Floyd Justice for Policing Act that they recently passed, as well as the John Lewis Voting Rights Act, because I strongly support strengthening civil rights laws and advancing comprehensive justice reform. Thank you.
Thank you. Tari.
All right. Firstly, I would like to applaud the House on the passage of HR 1280, also known as the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act of 2021. That was an important first step. We are not truly attacking the source in relation to the crime throughout this country, though, still. We need to be proactive. We must actually invest into the community as opposed to the land. And it's imperative that the federal government increases its presence in assisting the states, the county, and the local municipality governments. I would also like to address something very much so specifically about the state of Ohio. In relation to OPATA, we need to actually get some things together with that. We have officers who are not even trained, who are out there on our streets. And that is absolutely unacceptable. As a candidate fighting for equity and accountability at all chances, as your congressman, I will hold people accountable. This is unacceptable what is going on throughout our country. We have so many police shootings. that is occurring when individuals are being killed, being shot in the back of their head, evidence isn't being released. That is not acceptable under my watch as the next congressman. We're going to bring true accountability to this district, and I will always fight for you, and you will continue to see me fighting for you in district and in Congress. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian.
The 11th Congressional District needs to be a model for racial justice and police reform. We need to support our community's efforts to increase their efforts of diversion from prisons to mental health solutions and drug court solutions. We need to eliminate cash bail. We need to opt for treatment over incarceration. The Cleveland Co-Responder Program needs to be expanded. Programs like Peacemakers and Jim Brown's American. These are programs that are designed to de-escalate situations rather than create a George Floyd situation. There's a rise in methamphetamine and cocaine use in Akron and Cleveland, and that begs for input from our members in our community for the right solution. I'll work with the Biden team to support these evidence-based solutions that are happening right here in our community, not defund the police.
Thank you. We'll now turn to our third question. This one is regarding anti-Semitism and extremism. In the past year, we have seen a startling rise in anti-Semitism, hate groups, domestic extremism, and conspiracy theories, as well as the rise of white supremacy, which former President Trump refused to condemn and instead incited and fomented, culminating in the January 6th insurrection at the Capitol. In fact, today, as we speak, the House of Representatives is out of session due to a threat by a QAnon conspiracy theory and extremists. If elected, what measures would you take to combat the rise of anti-Semitism, domestic extremism, and white supremacy? Nina, we will start with you, followed by Shirley, Chantel, Tariq, Brian, and Jeff. Nina.
Yeah, dealing with issues of this magnitude, we must use the law, and we also must use bringing the communities together. Anti-Semitism is on the rise, racism, bigotry, and this has been the case for quite some time. And what happened on January the 6th is a manifestation of the unfinished business in this country, and we have to continue to call it what it is. And as a Black woman in America, I certainly understand that in this country, white nationalism threatens the Jewish community and it threatens the Black community with violence and terror. And the white supremacists who hate my Black son and hates your Black sons as well. And we must continue to unite and fight against that. In Congress, I will continue to push for the civil rights efforts and laws that will continue to change this, but also to be a bridge in my own community, building the types of communication that we need. Because the change that we are going to have in this country when it comes to fighting anti-Semitism and bigotry will not just happen on the floor of the Congress. We're going to have to take it to the streets and build unity against bigotry and continue to fight. Justice is not a destination. It is something that it continues generation after generation.
Shirley.
Well, I've always known how much I love my country. But I didn't realize just how much I love my country until the actions of June 6th, till the escalation of the crime, the scaling of the walls at the Capitol. That was absolutely horrendous. So I would take terrorists and label them as terrorists in our country and treat them just like they were terrorists that were outside of the country. I almost want the punishment to be almost unlimited, because when you turn against your own country, you can't get any wrong than that. That's just the furthest you can get in doing wrong and creating crime against your own country. So there's not much I can say about that, but they should be labeled as terrorists. They should be recorded. That should be recorded in the Department of Justice, FBI, and they should be that way for the rest of their lives and very limited in their movement in this country. Thank you.
Chantel.
Thank you very much. As an African American whose people have been subjected to institutional racism for more than 400 years, I have some understanding of the impact this kind of prejudice and hatred can have. The attack on the Capitol was horrifying. The attackers were wearing swastikas, and this was a culmination of what we saw in Charlottesville, where white supremacists were chanting, "Jews will not replace us." To combat this, there are at least 3 steps I would like to take in Congress. First, I strongly support the No Hate Act, which gives law enforcement better tools to combat hate crimes and improves reporting mechanisms. Second, I will always oppose the global BDS movement, which uses anti-Semitic rhetoric and arguments to weaken, isolate, and delegitimize Israel. Third, I believe we need to rebuild a political structure where leaders call out hate and anti-Semitism, coupled with investing more in the Holocaust education. Thank you for the question.
Firstly, I would like to say the insurrection that happened on January 6th was absolutely horrid. As a Navy veteran, I couldn't even imagine that something like that would actually occur. That the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States of America, inciting an insurrection. And if you felt the same way I felt, you know that we can't just downplay what happened that day. This fight is still on. These individuals still are radicalized in a manner that they're going to continue on that path of spreading hatred, intolerance, and bigotry. I want to say to everyone here right now that anti-Semitism has no place in this nation, and we must continue our efforts to rid this nation of racism and all of its intolerance. And I will always be the advocate for accountability and enforcing the current hate crime statutes. America, we have to continue our fight to end this domestic terrorism. I will advocate for increasing more appropriations in reference to the intelligence and analysis and collection regarding hate groups. Thank you.
Brian.
Trump gave white supremacy a free ride from Charlottesville to January 6th. In this session of Congress, for the first time, there were 2 non-Jews, which are co-chairs of the Anti-Semitism Committee. Grace Meng from Queens, New York, and Ted Lieu of Los Angeles. And actually, Ted's a graduate from St. Ignatius in '87, right here in this district in Cleveland. This finally acknowledges that anti-Semitism is not just a Jewish issue. FBI Director Gray recently stated that white supremacy, anti-Semitism are a top threat facing America today. As your congressman, I will work with my colleagues in the Biden-Harris team to make sure that anti-Semitic behavior is identified, indicted, and incarcerated.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you. When I was a state senator, I represented the largest Jewish community in the state of Ohio. I have been able to have a relationship with the local Northeast Ohio Jewish community throughout my career. I've learned so much about the commonalities that we share with the Jewish community. One of those commonalities is hate, being victims of hate. You have my commitment that when I go to Washington, I'll stand with the Biden administration, with Vice President Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, to put together a force that will approach anti-Semitism in a way that we take hate seriously. Trump has created an environment that was already there, but he escalated it. So I'm committed as Congressperson to go and use public policy, use my voice in the streets to stand with the Jewish community. I know that if you do not stand up for the hate that the Jewish community is receiving, then others as well will suffer. We right now also have the Asian community suffering. So hate has to be fought, and I'm committed to that. I have a history of that, and we will pass the policies necessary, and we will stand together. I am also in full support of the relationship with Israel.
Thank you. To our fourth question, which is regarding Israel. In 2016, the Obama administration signed a 10-year memorandum of understanding between the United States and Israel, providing for $38 billion in military assistance and life-saving missile defense programs. Do you support this memorandum of understanding without conditions? That is, do you support providing US security assistance and funding for missile defense programs to Israel at the levels agreed upon in 2016? Chantal will begin, followed by Tariq, Brian, Jeff, Nina, and Shirley. Chantal.
Thank you very much. Yes, I fully support the memorandum of understanding between the US and Israel that was negotiated by the Obama administration with no further conditions. It is important to point out the majority of these funds are actually spent in the United States. When I was in Israel, I saw firsthand the imminent threats facing the country when I stood on the Golan Heights, as well as when I visited the kibbutz near the Gaza Strip. As an American, I am proud of our government in that they invested in Israel's Iron Dome system, which has saved the lives of many Israelis, as well as our own US service members. So thank you for the question.
Thank you.
Can you hear me? Okay, all right. Within the international stage, it is imperative that the United States maintains its reputation of stability regarding cooperation with our allies that are in need. I wholeheartedly believe that we should honor our memorandums of understanding. However, it would be inappropriate of myself as a congressman to state that foreign military financing shouldn't have some conditions. And I want to acknowledge that, is that we are going to continue on our path of honoring conditions, honoring our agreements with our allies. But we have to always be mindful of the situations that could always arise. Our foreign aid is contingent upon numerous things. As we've seen in working in conjunction with Saudi Arabia, we need accountability in that aspect as well. So yes, I do wholeheartedly believe in honoring this agreement, but we should always have conditions when it comes to our American paid tax dollars and resources being appropriated or allocated for foreign assistance. Thank you.
Thank you.
The answer is yes, absolutely. I do support the MOU without conditions. This agreement negotiated by the Obama administration in 2016, it continued our over 70-year commitment to support Israel's ability to defend and protect themselves. Thank you.
Jeff.
I absolutely fully support the memorandum of understanding that President Obama signed. Absolutely. Israel is the only true ally in the Middle East of America, and we have to make sure it remains secure and safe, that we continue to work and jointly work through technology, through the military, through science, the sciences. We have to continue this partnership. And we also have to continue to stand with Israel as it seeks to find peace through a two-state solution. I'm committed to doing that. I'm committed to working with the Biden administration to make sure and that we have that we protect Israel and that we put no conditions on them. And I know that Israel also wants to find a solution, a two-state solution. So I'm committed to that. I'm committed to finding solutions for all of the issues between within the Middle East that impacts Israel. Thank you.
Thank you.
I believe firmly in the right of Israelis to live in safety and peace, free from fear of violence and terrorism from Hamas and other extremists. So of course I support continued U.S. aid to Israel to confront the security challenges. I also believe that our Palestinians are entitled to the same human rights and safety from violence and to be able to have self-determination in a state of their own. I am strongly pro-Israel and pro-Palestinian. I have taken exception with some of the policies of the current Israeli government. I do not think that Netanyahu is following a path to lead to peace. And in my view, the role of the United States of America is to be an even-handed arbiter in the Middle East and to ensure that each side lives in peace and security and freedom.
Thank you. Shirley.
I too agree with the MOU that Obama put in place. But I also, I visited Israel too. And I must say that I traveled, when I was in Israel, I traveled to Palestine as well. And I do understand how strategically that Israel was placed and that Israel is our ally, and we must maintain that relationship at any cost. However, I do not believe that we should give $38 billion to anyone without conditions. Even if that condition means working towards a two-state solution aggressively, there should be some condition. But I am pro-Israel as well. I love the country, but I do think there should be some condition, and I do believe in the MOU. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now hear from, no, is that the last? That was the last one? I think so. Okay, we have heard from everyone. I want to make sure we're equitable here. We have heard from everyone. Great. All right, we will now move to a speed round for questions specifically on the issue of Israel. I will say at the outset, these questions were drafted by JDCA with input from Jewish community leaders in Cleveland and in the district, and they should be answered with yes or no. So our first question, do you support a two-state solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? We will start with you, Tariq.
Yes, I do 100% believe in a two-state party solution, or two-state solution. It's imperative that we actually fight and remove the bloodshed that's going on all throughout this world. We have to stop it. Yes.
Great, Brian.
Yes.
Jeff. Take that as a.
I'm sorry. Yes, absolutely. Yes, I'm muted. Absolutely.
Nina.
Yes.
Shirley.
Yes.
Chantal.
Yes.
Great. Our second question, which has input from, as I mentioned, Jewish leaders in the area, including Joe and Josh. Do you support the global boycott, divestment, and sanctions movement, otherwise known as BDS? Again, it's a yes or no answer. Brian, we'll start with you.
No.
Jeff.
No.
Nina.
No, I personally do not, but I also do not support the criminalization of people who are peacefully organizing for political change.
Shirley.
No.
Chantal.
No.
Tariq.
No, but I will always advocate for ridding this world of human rights violations. So I will always advocate for that. Thank you.
Brian.
No again.
Okay, and our final speed round question regarding Israel. This is actually broader than that and includes other issues in the Middle East. Do you support diplomatic efforts to return to the JCPOA or the Iran nuclear deal or some updated version of this deal? We will start with Jeff.
Yes, absolutely.
Nina.
Yes.
Shirley.
Yes.
Chantal.
I support Biden's efforts to get a broader and stronger nuclear agreement with Iran.
Tariq.
Yes, I believe that we should bolster this actual JCPOA and ensure that we actually remove the tension that's going on throughout the Middle East. Thank you.
Brian.
Yes.
Great, thank you. We will now move to more audience questions. Again, do send your questions to info@jewishdems.org. Just as a reminder, please address your questions to all 6 of our candidates. Our first question comes from Andy Cara, who is affiliated with Bend the Arc Jewish Action Cleveland, regarding immigration. Immigration is an issue that is very important to many in the Jewish community who are still connected to their immigrant roots. Ohio 11 is also home to 37,214 individuals who were born outside of the US. What does immigration reform mean to you? And if elected, what would your priorities be with regard to changing our current immigration system? Nina, we will start with you.
Yeah, immigration is certainly one of the strong foundations of our nation, bringing people together with different cultures. It is important that we deal with DACA, which I'm really happy to see that the current president is doing. We must make sure that we have open arms, and especially for immigrants coming to this country who are under some type of threat. And that not only is it what we do legally in the Congress, it's not only what we do in regards to passing laws and policies, but it's also about building bridges of understanding too in our respective communities. So as the next Congresswoman, I will both work in the Congress to that regard, but also be one in the community, building understanding and bringing communities together so that we can create a better world simultaneously with the policies that are passed on the federal level.
Shirley.
I support DACA as well, and also the TPA, I believe that's what it's called. And I do believe that there has to be a more thorough, very thorough and serious conversation on immigration, and also about children being taken from their parents. I think it has to be bipartisan as well. So there's much work to be done in terms of immigration. And I look forward as a Congresswoman being in that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. The proposal that was unveiled by the Democrats on Capitol Hill for the pathway to citizenship is something that I would support. And that's my position as it relates to the people in Israel and those who are who have dual residency in Israel as well as America.
See, I'm the type of candidate, as your congressman, I can walk and chew gum at the same time. So we're going to address the issues that are happening right here at home, that our people are truly being devastated with right now. And we also should still embrace the ideals of diversity in immigration. So I do believe we should have a path for DACA to have citizenship. I will be an advocate for that. And we need to fight for the injustices that are happening at the border. What the past administration did was absolutely reprehensible. And we can no longer go forward as a country if we accept that type of rhetoric, that type of action and policy. I will be your fighter, as I stated earlier, and I will continue to be your fighter as I am your congressman. Thank you.
Brian.
Yeah, the Flannerys, like most people that are in the 11th Congressional District, actually came to America to escape oppression, violence, discrimination. And to come over here to America now in today's age, we're seeing remnants of that, of violence and discrimination. We need to treat all people fairly. And I do support the Biden team and their position on a path to citizenship, just like the Flannerys who came here about 150 years ago to look for a good opportunity.
The profound statement on the Statue of Liberty has not been applied to everyone who sought to come into America. Structural racism throughout our country also impact immigration. I support Dreamers, I support DACA, I support creating a pathway to citizenship. I support being fair and applying the same standards and regulations to everyone who wants to come in, no matter where they're from, no matter their skin color. We have not done that. Trump has, again, made that even worse, the way he treated those who came from Central America and Mexico. I believe that we have to stand up as a Congress, I will, to make sure it's fair, to make sure what is said on the Statue of Liberty applies to everyone, and that we are a welcoming country with standards that do not discriminate and do not have preferences. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question comes from Debbie from Akron. It is regarding gun violence. In large part due to gun violence, which reached its highest levels in Cleveland in 2020, since 1982, there have been 185 homicides. If elected to Congress, how will you work to end gun violence from continuing to plague our communities, schools, and places of worship here for Ohioans and all Americans? We will start with Shirley.
Thank you for that question. I think in terms of national policy, we have to build relationships with if possible, with the NRA, and we have to establish laws that create or not allow people to carry Army-style rifles and guns. That's the first thing we need to do. We also need to get closer to our community with, as I said, citizen and officer interactions. The policy will come from federal level, but it also has to be worked out with state level policies and also local. So to make sure that we lessen the violence in our neighborhoods, there has to be a lot of communication done, federal, local, and state. It is not just one level of government that can deal with this. And we have to make sure that those people who believe in their guns, who believe in using their guns, we have to deal with their choices as well, because they have their beliefs, they have their culture. So we all have to work together on it. It's just not, thank you.
Thank you. Chantal.
Thank you very much. We definitely need to take on the NRA head on. We have to hold gun manufacturers accountable, get weapons of war off the street, and ban the sale of assault weapons in high-capacity magazines. These are the things that are destroying our communities, and we have to make better common sense gun laws. And I have to agree, this is not just a federal issue. It starts here locally, where we have our governor who has instituted a Stand Your Ground law. These type of things don't make it safer for communities, they make them more dangerous. So we have to be willing to use our political voice and our political capital to ensure that the laws that we're drafting protects everyone in our communities. Thank you.
Freak.
See, the thing about me as your next congressman, I am authentic. As I stated previously, I know exactly what gun violence looks like. At 16 years old, I was riding a bicycle down the street with my cousin and got into a small verbal altercation with someone. And this young man who was around the same age as me, he pulled a firearm out on me, pointed it right in my face. And I was absolutely devastated, shell-shocked. I didn't even go to counseling after that. So one of the things what we need to really start accounting for is gun violence the underlying condition, or is gun violence the symptom? And we need to get to the underlying conditions that leads to the gun violence that is happening in our streets. As people have stated, the pandemic exacerbated the situations when more gun violence has occurred. People are poor. People are dying of starvation. People don't have health care. We need to push for things like Medicare for all. We need to push for things so people can have a chance where they can actually build, so they actually don't have to see the horrors of their community every day with no investment. I'm gonna always fight for the people, and most of all, don't ever forget that I'm always gonna address gun violence, because I'm a victim of gun violence. I've seen so many friends I've lost from gun violence, and it won't happen anymore. We have to fight now, and I will be your fighter as I stated. Thank you.
Brian.
Great to get a question from Akron, and I do want to state I do support the Second Amendment. But what I don't support is stand your ground, the concealed carry. What we need to do is focus on removing guns from irresponsible people. When the Columbine massacre occurred in the schools, the Ohio legislature responded by developing a safety plan. And what they failed to do was to include law enforcement in that planning. So I was successful in adding an amendment to the legislation to include that language. So when I'm in Congress, I'm going to look at working with the team and making sure that everyone is heard and everyone has a seat at the table. That's what I'm about.
As we focus on gun violence, when it comes to the day-to-day in the streets, senseless killings with the vast majority of the use of guns, we recognize that it is part of a structural problem that I've spoken about often here. It is a symptom. We have to be able to do three things at the same time. You've got to be able to have the national involvement and partnership to stop guns from coming into the communities. You have to have a reasonable interpretation of the Second Amendment, not what's going on in Columbus and in Washington prior to the Biden administration. Social factors create what is this violent community. I was a councilman for 14 years working the streets. I've seen it up close. I've seen folks who have no sense of hope, and they rely on bad decisions. We have to deal with closing the gun show loophole, for example. You have to go and fight don't let the NRA take over our country, continue to take over our country on this issue. But it is structural, it is social, and we have to deal with poverty. We have to deal with the social determinants. Thank you.
Nina.
Yes, gun violence is a multifaceted challenge in our country, and it has everything to do with the way that we're socialized in this nation. The Second Amendment is not an absolute, and we have too many people who treat it as if it is absolute. The framers of this country could never have imagined the types of weapons that we have right now, weapons right here on our streets every single day. And so we have to deal with this, not just through legal means, not just through laws and policies, but we got to deal with this as a matter of the heart. And so as many people have been faced with gun violence in their family. I had a relative who shot his father while he sat in his chair watching his favorite movie, and then went through the house and shot his mother. We have to deal with mental health challenges. We have to deal with economic challenges. We have to deal with the political challenges, because from Sandy Hook to this very moment, not to have certain leaders who are willing to stand up to forces that don't understand that we have to do a new thing in this country to deal with gun violence in all of its facets. That's political, economic, social, racial, and political. I will be there to continue to fight environment in this country.
Thank you. Our final set of audience questions, and we're trying to combine them, they're regarding climate change. And these questions come from Stephanie and Sue, I believe both in Cleveland, but Stephanie's definitely in Cleveland. The Special Presidential Envoy on Climate, John Kerry, recently announced that we have only 9 years left to avert a complete climate crisis. We are already seeing the effects today of extreme weather, including what happened recently in Texas, and scientists predict that it will only continue to get worse. If elected, how will you support initiatives to meet this impending crisis? And are you prepared to help the district, state, and nation get off fossil fuels and move to renewable energy in an equitable manner? Chantel, we will start with you.
Thank you. Thank you for the question. I certainly believe in the principles around the Green New Deal. We need to ensure that we have a clean energy revolution and address the threats that we've experienced and witnessed here in the United States, especially around what happened in Texas. We need to ensure that we are 100% clean energy economy and net zero emissions by 2050. Building a more resilient nation. We talk about the electronic cars and things of that nature that will help us produce a much greener planet. steps that we need to take much more boldly and much more aggressively. So I'm proud of the fact that Joe Biden entered the Paris climate agreement on day one. And these are the type of initiatives that I would love to be able to work with Congress. If I am so fortunate to represent the people of the 11th district, I want to work to help the Biden administration support these types of ideas and plans if I am so fortunate to go to Congress. So thank you.
Tariq.
I agree with my colleague in referencing to the Paris Climate Accord. I think it's imperative that we, as a nation that produces some of the most pollutants in the entire world, we need to actually be held accountable, and we need to hold ourselves accountable to that effect as well. So one of the other things that needs to, be addressed throughout this country is, as you stated, about moving away from fossil fuels. Now, we must still establish equity in that process as we're embarking on a journey to embrace new green energy jobs. So we have to make sure that we're always still being mindful about who is going to receive these jobs, the way we're going to actually move away from some of these coal jobs too, to protect those individuals who worked in that dying industry as well. And I didn't want to use that term, but yes, we need to be embarking into a future where we care about our children and our children's children. So yes, I will always advocate for green ideals and principles. And thank you.
Finally, we have a leader in our President Biden, who believes that climate change is a huge issue. And that's why I'm running, is to be on his team to support his efforts. And look at our district, look at what happened years ago when the river caught fire. And it was the Stokes brothers that set the tone for cleaning up that river. And today it's becoming a jewel. We need to support it and lead by example with the things we do here locally to lead the effort of a global climate change for everyone, for the better. Thank you.
Global warming is one of the most significant issues of our lifetime and of our future. The 2015 Paris Agreement, which most countries still are not fulfilling what they said they would do, gave us a framework that unfortunately, our countries are not going to reach the goal if they continue the way they are now. 9 years will be here before we know it. But we need to, I follow President Biden's hope and focus on 2050 as being net zero emissions, 100% clean economy. I support the fact that we need to innovate. We need to do solar and we need to do wind. And we can do it without this fear of losing jobs. The economy can actually, economists have shown us that it will benefit if we do it right, if we do climate change correctly. We can also bring jobs and transition people from the fossil fuel industry into the clean energy area. So renewable energy, as a congressperson, I will be out front fighting for a cleaner economy as well.
Nina.
Every single lever of justice is tied to taking care of Mother Earth, and for us as human beings, not just in this country, but all over the world. This is one where we're going to need all of our sisters and brothers across the globe to help us as a country, because we're going to help ourselves to eradicate the damage that we have done to Mother Earth. We got to kick certainly our addiction to fossil fuels and also ensure a just transition for workers in that field. We got to strengthen our national parks, and we have to eradicate environmental racism everywhere that it is. Black children have higher rates of asthma than anybody else in this country. We know what happened in Flint and also in Toledo, Ohio. All of these things are manifestations of our inability to take care of Mother Earth. And I will continue to be a climate change activist and push for laws and legislation that will help to change it, not just in our country, but hopefully building a world that is fighting for the same thing. All of our lives depend on taking care of Mother Earth.
Shirley.
I too, as my colleague just said, I am a climate activist, and I do believe we should move towards clean air and try to have it by 2050, as the Biden administration has put forth. I also do believe that we should hold those accountable who are damaging our clean air the most. And that is people like the UPSs and the Amazons and the American FedEx, because they are using our air and our roads more often than anybody else. So they should be held more accountable, and they should also pay more to help us get into the place where we need to get by 2050. So yes, I think that's something that we need to do and work on a lot more aggressive than we are. Thank you.
Thank you all. We deeply appreciate it. We have even more questions, and unfortunately we could not get to all of them, but we appreciate everyone who submitted questions. We will now move to 1 minute closing statements. Tariq, you will go first. Over to you.
All right. So first I wanted to say thank you to the Jewish Democratic Council of America's Ohio's chapter. I'll also say congratulations to all my colleagues that have entered this contested race to replace this coveted seat of the 11th Congressional District. But I want everyone to remember something about Tariq K. Shabazz. I am your fighter. I will be the one that will go into Congress and ensure that your voices will be heard. I will be the one that no matter what time of day it is, I am deeply committed and dedicated to you, the people. I represented the will of the people. And although I may not have some of the experience of some of my colleagues, don't ever misconstrue that for a lack of my ability to adapt. I am absolutely prepared to lead this district. And after these elections, I will be your next congressman, Tariq K. Shabazz. This is our moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Tariq. Brian.
Thank you for inviting me to participate. And as we know, Trump won Ohio. But Biden easily beat Bernie Sanders in the 11th, as did Hillary in 2016. And Biden beat Trump handily in the general election, right in this district. This is a Biden district. And joining and supporting Team Biden is one of my reasons for running. Last, I consider anyone who does not acknowledge Israel's right to exist and be recognized as the homestead to the world's Jewish population as the same as Republicans who will not acknowledge Joe Biden as the lawfully elected president of the United States. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Jeff.
Let me close by honoring those who held this seat that we compete for. The work of Congresswoman Marcia Fudge and her excellent leadership through her tenure, the work of the late, great Stephanie Tubbs Jones, and my mentor, the wonderful Congressman Louis Stokes. They set a standard in this district, a standard that I saw up close, that I worked with them about. It is a standard of leadership that is fearless, leadership that has no concern about anything but the people, leadership that fights for the people. And I want to continue that legacy that they put out there. I believe I can. I believe I have the experience. I believe I have the ability. I believe I understand this district. And I benefited from working with all three of them and saw up close the commitment necessary to be a congressperson in the 11th Congressional District. So the issues are significant, the issues are important. And then there's another issue, leadership that actually reflects the community.
Thank you, Jeff. Nina.
Thank you to the JDCA for holding this forum. I have two bookmarks for why I'm running in this campaign. One is from Congresswoman Barbara Jordan. What the people want is very simple. They want an America as good as its promise. Part of that promise is Medicare for all, canceling student debt, a $15 an hour minimum wage, making sure that people don't have to choose between their medications and eating. An America as good as its promise. The other one comes from the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. when he talks about power and justice and how they should work hand in hand, or power and love. And he said, power without love is reckless and abusive, and love without power is anemic and sentimental. Power at its best is implementing the demands of love. And love at its best, or justice at its best, is correcting everything that stands against it. That is why I am running this race, to lift the people, not so much on one administration or another. I can work with anybody, but working with doesn't mean acquiescing to. My only special interest in the 11th Congressional District will be the residents of this district, and I will be honored to serve as your next Congresswoman.
Thank you, Nina. Shirley.
I'd like to also thank you for holding this forum. It means a great deal to me. And from my heart of hearts, it means a lot, because what it says to me is that you obviously believe winning is about ideas and substance. That means a whole lot. You say to me that, or us, that it's more than about popularity or rigging an election. You say that you want people to see what a person or what we are about and what we've done, about our accomplishments and what we can accomplish. So I thank you for all of that, for giving us this air to your public. I'd also like to say that if you want to learn more about me, go to Shirley Smith for Congress.com without any spaces, Shirley Smith for Congress.com. And once again, I appreciate this so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Shirley. Chantel.
Thank you. Thank you to the thank you to the Jewish Democratic Council of America for the opportunity to share our positions on these very important issues. With 9 consecutive years of legislative experience and a proven track record of serving the people in this district, I believe I am best positioned and most prepared to fulfill the legacy of the Honorable Congresswoman Marcia Fudge and those who came before her. I am running to be a partner to the Biden-Harris administration and to help Speaker Pelosi pass an agenda to get the relief and the recovery into the hands of the people who have been hardest hit by this pandemic. And as the only elected official in this race, I have the unique privilege of having made decisions of over $200 million in COVID-19 relief funds and how they would be allocated to hospitals, small businesses, rental assistance programs, and job training efforts. So these are the things that I've done. These are the things that I would like to continue to do. And let's not be confused. Just because I am a Democrat, I am not so democratic that I can't work across the aisle to get things done. My legislation to declare racism as a public health crisis is proof of that. So I thank you so much for the opportunity again. And I'll take the predecessor, chantelbrown.com for more information. Thank you.
Thanks to all of you. We also want to thank John Barnes for joining at the beginning. And thanks to everyone watching today. This was a wonderful discussion. I think everyone's views were heard. We appreciate the candidates adhering to the rules and having this really substantive conversation with all of us and many of the Ohioans watching today. To close, I will turn it over to an Ohioan, our co-leader of the Ohio JDCA chapter and our program director, as well as member of our Next Generation Leadership Council, Bobby Saferstein. Bobby.
Thank you, Haley. I'm Bobby Saferstein, and I want to thank all of our candidates for participating in today's forum. Former Representative Barnes, Chairwoman Brown, Jeffrey Johnson, Tariq Shabazz, former Senator Smith, former Senator Turner, and former Representative Flannery. I also want to thank our local Ohio chapter for hosting us, our co-sponsor, Ben the Arc Jewish Action Cleveland, and to all of you at home joining us today. As an Akronite, I couldn't be more proud of today's forum, and I invite all Buckeyes and those that love us to join our JDCA Ohio chapter by visiting jewishdems.org. There, you can also learn about all of our past and upcoming events and national programs, including next week's discussion on Thursday, March 11th, on domestic terrorism with members of Congress. You'll also learn about different ways to take action on a range of issues that matter to us as Democrats anchored in our Jewish values, and information on becoming a JDCA member. Look, elections are important, voting is important, and it's never too early to get involved. We hope that after today, you're more energized than ever to support the candidate of your choosing, and then go out and vote for Ohio's newest representative to the US Congress, because your voice matters. Thank you all again for joining us today. An early Shabbat Shalom to you, and we look forward to seeing you all very soon. Take care and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Be safe.